Alpine climbing is the practice of finding a balance between survival and the summit. The safest option would be to stay home, but for my partners and me, the attraction of the big mountains is strong, and we are drawn to their flanks to experience their majesty and misery up close.
Hey everybody, I'm Graham Zimmerman. We are in Bend, Oregon, which is my home. In my corner of the garage where we keep all the climbing gear. I work as a professional alpinist, and EpicTV just launched a film on a climb we did a couple of years ago called Link Sar, and we are here to talk about gear, and the gear that we used on Link Sar. We may talk about another mission to K2 from a couple months ago. And yeah, I think that this is going to be really cool, talking about some of the gear that we used, what worked, what didn't, and what you should be considering when you go out into the mountains. In climbing these days, we have a lot of different options when it comes to gear, and on Link Sar, it was very much a technical alpine climb. So we were up in the snow. It was mostly mixed climbing and snow and ice climbing, and that means that we were much more focused on utilizing mountain climbing equipment that was more like ice axes and crampons rather than having our rock shoes out there. We'll start out with talking about ice axes. Up on Link Sar, I utilized the QUARKs from PETZL. This has been a tool that I have used on most of my big missions to the mountains. It's like tried and true. It's one of the best ice climbing tools on the market. And if we compare this to a more aggressive tool, such as the Nomic, you can see that this only has a single pommel on it, so it's got less of a handle. But what that allows us to do is actually plunge it into the snow. And that means that for these climbs on which we're climbing snow, and we're climbing ice, and we're climbing mixed ground, having a more kind of all-around tool is really helpful. If I end up climbing really technical snow in this, this tool is not going to work that well. Next up is crampons. In the big mountains, I've always used the Dart, up until a couple of years ago. And the Dart is one of the best technical crampons that PETZL makes. I think it's the best technical crampon on the market. And I've always brought these as a mono point, and the reason is that I've always wanted to have the tool for the hardest pitch on the climb. You know, I can manage to use these when in the snow, even though it's not the best snow crampon. But when the mixed climbing is hard, when the ice climbing is hard, I want to have the best tool for the job for those particular pitches. Now, I don't actually have them here. They're actually in my cache over in Pakistan. But I've ended up using the Sarkins more and more, which is a slightly less technical crampon. It's got two front points, and those front points have a hood over the top. And that means that they're really good for snow climbing as well as quite good for mixed and ice climbing. So I work with SCARPA. I have forever. I absolutely love the boots they make. On the day-to-day when I'm going ice climbing, I tend to climb in a single boot. So this is the Phantom Tech boot, which has been a really wonderful boot for ice and mixed climbing. You know, if I'm climbing in the Rockies, if I'm mixed climbing here closer to home in Oregon. But when we go to the big mountains, we want to bring something larger. So this is the Phantom 6000, and this is the boot that I've used most of the time while climbing in the bigger mountains of the world, up to about 7,000 meters. And so this is a double boot, meaning that it actually has a second boot on the inside that's purely for insulation. And what that means is that A, it's warmer, and B, at night when I'm sleeping on these routes, I can actually pull that liner out and dry it out separately. So if I want to dry them out, I don't have to sleep with the entire boot in my sleeping bag. And I found these to be plenty warm for everything that I've climbed up to 7,000 meters. Next, let's consider harnesses. So when we consider harnesses, we're considering a few different things. One is the feature set on the harness itself. The next is how much it weighs, and then how comfortable it is. And when we talk about comfort, we're generally talking about how comfortable it's going to be to hang in. So these are the two harnesses that I've been using in the Karakoram recently. This one, the SITTA, is going to be a larger harness that has more surface area for sitting on and more, more gear loops and things like that. So for technical climbing, in which I'm going to be doing a lot of hanging, particularly at belays, this is the harness that I've been using. It does not have adjustable leg loops, which is oftentimes seen as kind of part of an alpine harness. But I find that you get away without having adjustable leg loops just fine. You just got to make sure it fits correctly. But then when actually hanging in this thing and hanging belays and stuff like that, it's really comfortable, and then has plenty of gear on the gear, or plenty of room on the gear loops for bringing all the stuff that you need. Now, the summer when we went to K2, I ended up bringing the altitude harness, which is this guy. It's a much lighter harness, and it actually only traditionally comes with 2 gear loops on it. But that was the only reason that I didn't feel like I could use it. So instead, what I did is actually sewed 2 gear loops onto it, which meant that I had a super lightweight harness that that I didn't need to be like comfortable, because the terrain was not so steep that I was going to be doing a bunch of hanging belays in it. But I did have the room for all the equipment that I needed while climbing. As we look at the equipment that we actually brought en route in terms of like technical gear, as we talk about climbing gear, I don't actually have the rack that we carried on Link Sar, or the rack that we carried on K2. They were certainly much lighter than this. All these little small widgets are things that I'm using on my rock climbing project here closer to home right now. But generally speaking, what I'll bring is a selection of cams. In the case of Link Sar, I think we brought a single set of cams from, kind of smaller cams, something like a yellow TCU that we have here. Sorry, that's a yellow master cam. And then up to a larger kind of hand-sized cam like this C4, ultralight C4 from Black Diamond. And then that covers kind of fingers to hands. And then for smaller sizes, we'll carry a set of wires, and then we'll also carry pitons. And that means that we're fully covered for all the sizes we might run into, with the exception of maybe an off-width crack, but it's a really big piece of gear, so we don't tend to carry the kind of larger gear. And then we're doubled down in the smaller sizes with this stuff, and then also the nuts and the pitons are things that we tend to be able to leave behind.
I had just taken a huge fall at 6,900 meters on a giant unclimbed peak.
Helmets are very important. This is the SIROCCO by PETZL, which is what I've used on every mission for about 10 years now. And I wear it in white because it's a little bit cooler in the sun. And I think that with helmets, if you're in the mountains, you should absolutely have a helmet on. There's no good argument to the contrary, particularly with these ultralight helmets these days. So this is the helmet I've been wearing in the hills recently. And this is the one I would recommend. But the thing that is not a recommendation, I think is a requirement, is if you're in the mountains, put on a helmet. It will save your life, quite literally.
As we started to climb, we moved faster. Our bodies were more habituated to the thin air.
When we're out there, we of course have headlamps. If you watch the film, you'll have seen that we were climbing quite a bit during the nighttime. That's mostly to avoid hot temperatures during the day down lower on the route. I will generally carry something like this ACTIK core. It's a very simple headlamp that's very bright, and it's easy to deal with the batteries. This actually doesn't have batteries in it right now, but I carry a bunch of batteries for it. Besides just having backup batteries for that headlamp, I will also carry one of these little BINDIs, and I'll make sure this thing's fully charged, and that will mean that besides having those extra batteries, I also have a full extra headlamp in case something gets dropped or broken. And that makes a really big difference. And that means that no matter what, I've got options for how I manage climbing at night. All right, everybody, that's my gear show for you. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm Graham Zimmerman, and if you want to watch the Link Sar film, it is on EpicTV. And if you want to find out more about this gear that we've been talking about and maybe pick some of it up, head over to EpicTV as well. And I think all that gear is actually linked in the page below. Please take care, please be safe, and have fun out there. We'll see you later.
My name is Graham Zimmerman. As an alpinist, I've always been drawn to the biggest and steepest mountains in the world. Occasionally, one peak stands out from the others. A lodestar that lures my imagination on countless dream voyages. And in 2019, that peak was Link Sar.